So this is notes 2.1. I want you to notice that it's describing terminating and repeating decimals. Think about what terminating means when you might have heard of the movie The Terminator. He ends things. Terminating means that the decimal is going to end. And repeating obviously means that it's going to repeat. So when we convert fractions to decimals, bummer, I just realized my calculator's not on here. You are accustomed in elementary school of doing something like this, where you had your number in here, and then you did some dividing down the side. That works perfectly well when you have whole numbers and things that don't have any remainders. So when you have a remainder, you have to keep dividing. What we do, I'm going to take the example 3/4. Remember that this line here between the 3 and the 4 actually means to divide. Woo. And so we take top goes in, bottom goes out, and we're going to divide. But 4, you can't make a group of 4 out of 3, so you need to add a decimal and a couple of zeros so that you can focus on dividing into 30. How many groups of 4 are in 30? Hopefully you said 7. 7 times 4, because we multiply by the 4 over here, is 28. Hopefully this looks familiar to you. And 30 minus 28 is 2, which means we're not done dividing, because this would be 0 if we were done. So we're going to bring down our other 0, and how many groups of 4 go into 20? Hopefully you said 5. And then we multiply this 5 times the 4 to get 20. And we end up with 0 when we subtract, so we know we're done. Because we're done, this is what we would call a terminating decimal. 3/4 is 0 wholes and 75 hundredths, 0.75. Think about money. 0.75, 3/4 makes 75 cents, and sometimes you might hear people say this fraction as 3/4. Okay? So I'm going to pause this and see if I can bring up the calculator on here, because I don't think I can. Okay, so the bummer of me doing this on my Chromebook is that I can't show you the calculator. But if you look at your calculator, you go down to the 3rd row, and the second button over says N over D. That N stands for numerator, D for denominator. So hit that key, type in the 3. You should have a blinker in the numerator right now. Hit the arrow down, type in 4. You have to hit the arrow to end the fraction, or it will give you an error. So arrow over so that you just see 3/4 on your screen, and hit enter. It doesn't change it to a decimal. So you might remember a key just above the enter that looks like this. It has double arrows in opposite directions. It's directly above the enter sign, and when you hit that, it will automatically change your 3/4 to 0.75. So this is what is happening when you type that into your calculator. But we're going to be using our calculator a bunch. I want you to try this one. Use your calculator, the fraction key N over D. This is a negative. I need you to know the negative is on the bottom row to the left of the enter. Don't use a subtraction sign, because subtraction is a operation. You want it to be negative. So I'm going to hit the negative sign and then the fraction. Type in 3, arrow down 8, arrow over to end the fraction, and then hit that double arrow, enter. That gives you negative 0.375. So if you didn't get negative 0.375, I want you to stop this and rewind this recording to hear what keys those were again. Okay? Now, I do want you to know that, yeah, the calculator is a great tool, but sometimes it's super easy to do things in your head. So let's think about changing to decimals. This place is called the tenths. 2 places away from the decimal is called the hundredths. And 3 places away from the decimal is called the thousandths. So if I could get my fraction to be something out of 10, or something out of 100, or something out of 1,000, it would be super easy to just write it in those spots. Can 25, when multiplied by something, easily turn into one of these? Hopefully you said if you multiply by 4, you'd get 100. If you multiply the denominator by 4, you have to multiply the numerator by 4. 12 times 4 is 48 over 100. Now that took us a few minutes to do, but if you're doing it in your head, and you know 25 times 4, it'll go a lot faster, but your decimal is going to be 0.48. You can write that 48 with the correct number of digits, 48 hundredths. Okay? Yes, you can still type it into your calculator, but I just want you to know that sometimes things are easy, like if you had 1/10. 1/10. Well, quick, you know 10 times 10 is 100, 1 times 10 is 10. Oh, actually, it's a bad example, but, okay, you'd have 10 hundredths, which is actually 1/10. You could have just done that. Bad example, it's okay. Oops. Now, not all decimals are going to be terminating. Some of our fractions are going to create repeating decimals. So let's take 1/3. Remember, the line between the two numbers means to divide. Top goes in, bottom goes out. Annex a decimal and 2 zeros. 3 does not divide into 1. You can't make a group of 3 if you only have 1. So we're going to divide 10 by 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. I didn't end in a 0, so I bring down and I keep dividing. How many groups of 3 go into 10? 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract to get 1. It didn't come out 0, so I annex a 0, bring it down. How many 3s are in 10? 3. Guess what's going to keep happening? I'm going to always end up with 1. Once you see that something's repeating 3 times, you know it's going to continue to repeat. And we're going to write that as a repeating decimal point here. Only write what's repeating once and put a line over it. Little extra credit, if you can over the weekend, look up the math word, the mathematical word for that line. I'll give you a dum-dum. All right? It's not called a line. It's not called a repeating line. Just saying. Okay? All right, so sometimes we have things that terminate, and sometimes we have things repeat. And sometimes we have a number with a whole number in front of it. So now this is a mixed number. It has an integer, whole number integer, and it has a fraction. All right? On that same n over key d, the third one down, second one over, if you look right above it in green, it looks like this. And that means you can use that key with the second key, the green one at the top, to create your mixed number. So to type this in, you're going to type second fraction. Now you can see that the cursor, the blinker, is in front of your fraction. You can hit the -2. Remember, negative is at the bottom. You have to arrow to get the blinker to be in the numerator. Type in your 7. Arrow down to type in your 9. And arrow out to end that fraction. And hit the double arrow to make it a decimal. And you get negative 2.77777778. So the question is this a repeating decimal, or does this end at 8? Is it terminating? Well, your calculator has only a certain number of digits. So let's think about what I told you before, that if something repeats 3 times, you know it's going to repeat. So in this case, you know that you're going to have negative 2.7 repeating. Let me tell you what that 8 is. That 8 is just that this ran out of space on your calculator. So it said, okay, what was here? There was a 7. 7 is higher than 5, so it's going to tell it to go up to an 8. So it rounds the last digit just because it has a lack of space. But we know through our knowledge that we know it's going to repeat because it repeated at least 3 times. So it's going to continue doing that. All right? So that's an example right there of what that looks like. So now there's 4 examples here at the bottom. I want you to pause the video and use your calculator to write these as decimals. And then start the video again and see how you did. Oops. Okay, so hopefully you typed in a negative sign with a fraction, 7/8. This should be negative 0.875. Next one should be 2.125. Next one confused some kids. It's going to be negative, because if your fraction's negative, your decimal's negative. And what repeats is 2 and 7. So you write the 2 and the 7 because they're going to repeat, and you put the bar over both of them to show that it's going to go 27, 27, 27, 27. Now, I just want to show you what it would look like if your calculator had said that the answer was, come on, machine, 0.27777. That would be 0.27 with a line over the 7. So that's a difference in those, and I like to show the difference so that you can see why that line goes over both. And then we have 8 1/3, which is 8.3 repeating. Okay? All right, so that's as far as we're going to go today. When we come back on Monday, we'll talk about what happens if you see a decimal. How do you convert it to a fraction? Maybe you can give that some thought. But that's what we're going to work on today, and there's no homework.